The piercing guttural scream tore through the sterile silence of the delivery room, a raw testament to agony and effort. Outside, Michael paced, a coiled spring of anticipation, every nerve taut. Inside that room, their future was being born. This child, a son he prayed, was the very seed of their hopes, the cornerstone of their legacy, the dawn of everything they had ever dreamed. But when the first cries finally pierced the air, they were quickly followed by a hushed, anxious silence from the medical team. Something had changed. A shadow had fallen over what should have been their brightest day. What unspeakable truth had just entered the world with their newborn? And how would this family, once brimming with eager expectation, ever confront it? The air in the delivery room was thick with a primal symphony of pain. Sarah's screams, raw and ragged, tore through the sterile silence, each one a testament to the agony gripping her. I can't do this," she gasped, her voice hoarse, her face slick with sweat and tears. Her knuckles were white where they clutched the bed rails, her body writhing with a desperate energy. Outside the swinging doors a man paced, his heart a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. Michael, tall and broad-shouldered, usually a picture of calm confidence, was a nervous wreck. His usually neatly combed dark hair was disheveled, and he ran a hand through it repeatedly, pulling at the strands as if to physically tug away the minutes that crawled by. He pressed his ear against the cold metal of the door, straining to catch any sound, any hint of progress. Every shriek from Sarah sent a fresh wave of panic through him, twisting his stomach into knots. This baby, this child, was everything. A son. He'd envisioned this moment countless times. A strong, healthy boy to carry on his name, to inherit his aspirations, to be his legacy. He'd meticulously decorated the nursery, a vibrant blue sanctuary filled with toy cars and miniature footballs, each item chosen with a future of rough and tumble play in mind. The thought of anything less was a gnawing fear he tried to push deep down. He imagined teaching him to throw a baseball, the satisfying thud of a bat connecting with a ball, the proud gleam in a boy's eyes. A son was not just a child. He was the fulfillment of a dream, a symbol of his own virility and success. Then a sudden piercing cry, not Sarah's but new, fragile, unmistakable. Michael's head snapped up. It was here. His son was here. A wave of profound relief washed over him, so intense it almost buckled his knees. He leaned against the wall, breathing a shaky sigh of pure, unadulterated joy. The door swung open and a smiling nurse, her scrubs a blur of motion, emerged. "Mr. Thompson? You have a healthy baby boy." Michael practically burst into the room, his eyes scanning for Sarah, for their son. Sarah lay exhausted but beaming, her face pale but radiant. And nestled in her arms, swaddled in a soft white blanket, was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. A perfect, tiny face, little fists clenched, dark wisps of hair already peeking from beneath a cap. He felt an overwhelming surge of love, so powerful it brought tears to his eyes. He carefully reached out a finger, and the baby's tiny hand instinctively curled around it, holding on with surprising strength. He's perfect," Michael whispered, his voice thick with emotion. But then the doctor approached, a subtle hesitation in her usually confident demeanor. Her smile, while still present, seemed a little too tight, a little forced. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," she began, her voice gentle, almost hesitant. "Your son, he's absolutely beautiful. However," Michael's heart seized. The words "however" hung in the air, a chilling premonition. He gripped Sarah's hand, his gaze darting between the doctor and his sleeping son. "What is it, doctor?" Sarah asked, her voice raspy, a flicker of fear replacing her earlier joy. The doctor cleared her throat, her eyes softening with a touch of sympathy. "During the delivery, we observed something concerning with his right leg. It appears there's an issue with its development. It's a congenital condition and unfortunately, it means he won't be able to walk normally." She paused, allowing the words to sink in, heavy and devastating. "He will require assistance, likely crutches or other aids, throughout his life." The world tilted on its axis. Michael felt a cold dread spread through him, extinguishing the warmth of a moment ago. His perfect son. His legacy. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Sarah let out a soft sob, tears silently streaming down her temples into her hair. The joy in the room evaporated, replaced by a suffocating blanket of grief and disappointment. The dreams Michael had meticulously built, the visions of his son running and playing, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. This wasn't the strong, robust boy he'd imagined. This was damaged. They brought the baby, whom they named Jack, home. The nursery, once a beacon of hopeful blue, now felt like a cruel mockery. Each miniature football, each toy car seemed to mock their crushed hopes. The initial days were a blur of hushed conversations and forced smiles. They loved him, of course they did. He was their son. But the initial exhilaration of parenthood had been replaced by a quiet, pervasive sadness, a dull ache that lingered in the corners of their minds. For Michael, the disappointment festered. The boy who was supposed to be his pride became, in his eyes, a symbol of failure, a constant reminder of what wasn't. The weight of shattered expectations bore down on him. He started coming home later, the faint scent of stale cigarette smoke and cheap alcohol clinging to his clothes. His evenings were spent at the local pub, drowning his sorrows and the image of his son's frail leg in amber liquid. Sarah, left alone with a newborn and a rapidly deteriorating marriage, felt a profound loneliness. She'd look at Jack, his innocent face alight with the simple joy of being held, and a wave of maternal love would clash with a bitter resentment for the turn their lives had taken. She felt betrayed by fate, abandoned by her husband, and overwhelmed by a future she hadn't signed up for. 1 year crawled by, marked by the slow, painful realization of Jack's limitations. He wasn't crawling as robustly as other babies, his right leg dragging a little, an awkward hitch in his movements. Every developmental milestone that other parents celebrated became a painful reminder for Sarah and Michael. Their house, once filled with the hopeful anticipation of a new life, became a quiet, strained place. Then a sudden, unexpected twist. Sarah was pregnant again. Michael's initial reaction was a mixture of shock and a flicker of hope he hadn't dared to acknowledge. Could this be their chance? A chance for the normal son he craved? Sarah, despite her earlier emotional struggles, found a renewed sense of purpose. This time she prayed things would be different. 9 months later, the delivery room echoed with a different kind of cry. This time there was less agony, more anticipation. Michael stood by Sarah's side, his heart thumping with a frantic hope he barely dared to entertain. This was it, their second chance. And then a new baby, a second son, was placed in Sarah's arms. Perfect in every way. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and 2 strong, perfectly formed legs. Michael leaned over, his voice hoarse with relief. Is he normal, doctor? Is he developing normally? His eyes were wide, desperate for confirmation. The doctor smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile this time. He's perfect, Mr. Thompson. A perfectly healthy baby boy. A wave of euphoria washed over Michael and Sarah. They looked at each other, tears of pure joy, relief, and gratitude streaming down their faces. This was the baby they had dreamed of. This was the normal, healthy child they had longed for. They named him Daniel. But as the days turned into weeks and Daniel's robust health became undeniable, a subtle shift occurred in the household. The initial joy, while immense, slowly morphed into a blatant favoritism. Daniel, the healthy, perfect one, became the center of their universe. Jack, barely a year old and still struggling with his mobility, faded into the background, a stark contrast to his vibrant younger brother. The early signs were insidious, almost imperceptible to an outsider, but devastating to a sensitive little boy. There were times when Jack, a 3-year-old now, his small belly rumbling with hunger, would cry out for food. He tried to drag himself across the floor, his weak right leg hampering his efforts, towards the kitchen where Sarah was cooing over Daniel, who was being spoon-fed a carefully prepared meal. "Mommy hungry," Jack would whimper, his voice thin with desperation. Sarah, her attention entirely consumed by Daniel, would sigh, a sound of annoyance rather than sympathy. "Can't you be quiet, Jack? Don't you see your brother is sleeping? You're always demanding something, it's so tiresome." She'd wave him away, sometimes even give him a gentle push with her foot, not malicious but dismissive. One evening, after another round of his cries for food, Jack found himself locked in his room. The door clicked shut, plunging him into a sudden terrifying darkness. A small dry piece of bread was shoved under the door, his dinner, a meager offering compared to the warm, nourishing meals Daniel received. He sat on the floor, the bread clutched in his trembling hand, the tears silent now, replaced by a hollow ache in his chest. As he grew, the disparity became more pronounced. Jack learned to navigate his world, not on his own 2 feet, but with the aid of a crutch, a constant physical reminder of his difference. The crutch became an extension of him, a part of his identity in a family that increasingly saw him as an inconvenience, a burden, a shadow to their perfect, normal son. And thus, the painful saga of Jack's childhood truly began. 10 years later, the silence in the Thompson household wasn't just quiet. It was deafening, a constant echo of Jack's marginalized existence. At 13, he was a gangly, often overlooked shadow, his right leg still unable to bear his full weight, forcing him to rely on the familiar rhythmic tap of his crutch. The once vibrant blue nursery now belonged solely to Daniel, a testament to the lopsided affection that governed their home. Daniel, now 12, had grown into a cocky, entitled boy, a direct reflection of his parents' unwavering adoration. He reveled in his position as the favored son, a small tyrant in a house where his every whim was indulged. His favorite pastime, a cruel game he perfected over the years, was tormenting Jack. He'd trip him in the hallway, sending Jack sprawling with a sickening thud, then feign innocence, his eyes sparkling with malicious amusement. Sometimes he'd snatch Jack's crutch and hide it, leaving Jack stranded, a helpless, pathetic figure struggling to move. The humiliation was a raw, burning wound, especially when his parents were present. One particularly unbearable afternoon, Daniel, grinning, snatched Jack's crutch mid-step, sending him tumbling onto the polished wooden floor. The impact jarred Jack's weak leg, sending a bolt of pain through him. "Give it back, Daniel," Jack yelled, his voice cracking with a mixture of pain and frustrated rage. He pushed himself up, trying to regain some semblance of dignity as he awkwardly hopped on one foot. Daniel simply laughed, waving the crutch tauntingly out of reach. Just then Michael walked in, his brow furrowed. Without a moment's hesitation, his hand shot out, slapping Jack hard across the face. The sound cracked through the tense air, sharp and brutal. Jack's head snapped back, a red welter blossoming on his cheek. Tears welled in his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. "Are you that petty, Jack?" Michael sneered, his voice laced with disgust. "He was just playing. Can't you take a joke?" Daniel snickered, a triumphant glint in his eyes. The injustice was a bitter taste in Jack's mouth. His father's words, his harsh actions, were a constant confirmation of his worthlessness. Jack retreated further into himself, a quiet, brooding presence, his world shrinking day by day. Yet, despite the emotional desolation that surrounded him, a quiet, unexpected passion bloomed within Jack. In the solitude of his room, away from the derision and neglect, he found solace in music. He discovered he had a voice, a surprisingly clear melodic tenor that could weave through the silence, carrying the weight of his unspoken emotions. He taught himself to play the old, slightly out-of-tune piano in the dusty living room, his fingers, though sometimes clumsy, coaxing out melodies that transported him to a world where his leg didn't matter, where he wasn't a burden. His singing was his secret comfort, a private rebellion against the crushing reality of his life. The mundane routine of their strained family life was shattered one evening at dinner. The clatter of forks against plates was the only sound until Michael cleared his throat, a calculated pause that always preceded an important announcement. Jack instinctively tensed. "Jack, you won't need to go to school anymore," Michael stated, his voice devoid of warmth, as if discussing a trivial household expense. "There's no point in you studying. You won't be able to do anything with it anyway. We'll save that money and focus it on your brother." The words hit Jack like a physical blow. His fork clattered onto his plate. Shattered, his eyes welled up with hot tears. But Daniel and I still go to school together now," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The idea of being cut off, isolated even further, was a chilling prospect. School, however unwelcoming it sometimes felt, was at least a connection to the outside world, a place where he could momentarily escape the suffocating atmosphere of home. Sarah, usually silent during Michael's pronouncements, chimed in, her voice surprisingly firm. "I'm enrolling Daniel in a better school, a more prestigious one. His future needs to be bright." She avoided Jack's gaze, her loyalty firmly with her perfect son. "But I want to go to school too," Jack pleaded, a desperate edge to his voice. The thought of being confined to the house, completely at their mercy, was unbearable. Michael's face contorted in anger. What's the point? You're useless. You're already a burden on this family, he roared, his words echoing off the walls, each one a fresh stab to Jack's already wounded spirit. Then Daniel, ever the opportunist, chimed in, a smirk playing on his lips. That's right. Investing in me is the smart choice. You're worthless. I'll probably have to support you later anyway, so you should just shut up and listen. His words, dripping with arrogance and contempt, were the final excruciating blow. Jack couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, suffocating. He pushed himself away from the table, his crutch clattering as he stood. He didn't say another word, couldn't. He just turned, his head bowed, and hobbled to his room, the sound of their indifferent chatter, already pursuing him. He collapsed onto his bed, the tears finally bursting forth, hot and uncontrollable, soaking his pillow. He wept until his throat was raw, until there were no tears left, a silent, desperate lament for a life that was never truly his own. From that day on, Jack's life became an unending nightmare. Trapped at home, he was no longer just ignored. He was actively scorned. His parents treated him like an inconvenience, a dirty secret they wished they could erase. Get out of the way. Sarah would snap if he was in her path. Don't touch that, you'll break it. Michael would accuse him, even when he hadn't touched anything. Daniel's taunts grew bolder, his actions more cruel, knowing he had his parents' full backing. Jack was an unwanted ghost in his own home. The crushing weight of their contempt became unbearable. One morning after Daniel had deliberately poured water over his schoolbooks, ruining them, Jack knew he couldn't take it anymore. He faced his family at the breakfast table, his voice surprisingly steady, despite the tremor in his hands. If you all think I'm such a nuisance, he said, looking at each of them, his gaze lingering on his father's indifferent face, then I can just leave. Michael and Sarah burst into laughter, harsh and mocking. Go on then. If you can even manage to leave. Michael scoffed, a sneer on his lips. Daniel, ever ready to add his poison, chimed in. Haven't you caused enough trouble for this family already, and now you're saying this? Jack turned to leave, his heart heavy but resolute. He took one step, then another, the tapping of his crutch echoing ominously. Wait! Michael's voice, sharp and sudden, stopped him. Jack paused, a flicker of something akin to hope, however faint, sparking within him. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a shred of compassion left. Perhaps his father had a flicker of guilt, a fleeting moment of paternal instinct. He turned, his eyes searching Michael's face. But Michael's expression was cold, calculating, devoid of any warmth. Before you go, he said, his voice flat, you need to sign this. He held out a single sheet of paper. It's a document to sever all ties with this family. Just in case anything happens to you, we don't want to be implicated. We don't want any trouble. Jack stared at the paper, then at his father. The words twisted in his gut, a sickening blend of shock and an almost surreal disbelief. To be so utterly discarded, to have his very existence disavowed, it was a cruelty beyond anything he had imagined. The last shred of hope shriveled and died. With trembling hands he took the pen, scrawled his name on the dotted line, and pushed the paper back across the table. He didn't look at them again. He turned and limped towards the door, his crutch tapping a rhythm of desperate escape. Hold on! Michael's voice cut through the air again. Jack paused, a new wave of apprehension washing over him. What more could they want? That crutch, Michael said, pointing to the worn wooden support. That can fetch a good price. You're leaving the family, you're not taking anything from this house. Jack froze, his jaw clenched. To strip him of even the meager tool that allowed him a semblance of mobility, to leave him utterly helpless, it was an act of breathtaking heartlessness. He looked at his father, at his mother, at Daniel, their faces reflecting only cold indifference. There was no love, no regret, no humanity left in their eyes for him. He slowly, deliberately, unhooked the crutch from under his arm and placed it gently on the floor. Then, without a word, without a backward glance, he limped out of the house alone into the harsh, uncaring world, leaving behind the only family he had ever known, and stepping into an unknown future armed with nothing but a broken spirit and an aching, empty void where hope used to be. The biting wind was a cruel companion. whipping around Jack's thin frame as he hobbled through the unfamiliar streets. The crude, splintered stick he'd found was a poor substitute for his crutch, digging into his armpit with every agonizing step. Each movement was a testament to his desperation, a slow, painful shuffle that left him breathless and aching. He approached one eatery after another, the tantalizing smells of cooking food only intensifying the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. He'd push open the door, a flicker of hope in his eyes, and ask, "Excuse me, sir/ma'am, do you need any help? I can wash dishes, clean tables, anything." But each time the response was the same. A dismissive glance, a shake of the head, sometimes an outright sneer. "We don't need charity cases here, kid. Can't afford to have someone like you tripping over everything." The words, sharp and cold, were like tiny daggers, each one reinforcing the message he'd heard his entire life. He was a burden, useless, unwanted. His heart, already a bruised and tender thing, sank lower with every rejection. He was just a boy, barely a teenager, cast out and left to fend for himself in a world that seemed to have no place for him. As dusk bled into a starless night, the city lights blurred through his tear-filled eyes. His stomach cramped with hunger, his muscles screamed with exhaustion, and a profound bone-deep weariness settled over him. He felt utterly, terrifyingly alone. Just as he thought he couldn't take another step, a faint glow pierced the gloom. It was a small, unassuming diner, its single neon sign flickering, Maria's Kitchen. He pushed the door open, the bell above it jingling softly, a sound that felt strangely welcoming after hours of silence. Inside, a woman in her late 40s with kind, tired eyes and a warm, inviting smile, looked up from wiping down the counter. Her name was Maria. She had a sturdy build, her hands calloused from years of work, but her gaze was gentle, filled with an empathy that instantly disarmed Jack. He must have looked a sight, disheveled, tear-streaked, leaning heavily on his makeshift stick. Without a word, she gestured towards a stool. "Come in, child. You look like you've been through a war." Jack, hesitant at first, slowly shuffled towards the counter. The warmth of the diner, the comforting aroma of simmering stew, was a stark contrast to the cold, unforgiving streets. He recounted his story, his voice cracking at times, the raw pain of his abandonment spilling out. Maria listened patiently, her expression never wavering, a silent testament to her compassion. When he finished, she simply nodded. "You can stay here," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You can wash dishes, help me clean. In return, you'll have a roof over your head and food in your belly." A wave of overwhelming relief washed over Jack, so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. A place. A chance. He nodded vigorously, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. From that day on, Jack worked tirelessly. He was meticulous with the dishes, scrubbing them until they gleamed, his small, awkward movements becoming more efficient with practice. The rhythm of the work, the simple act of contributing, brought a quiet satisfaction he hadn't known in years. And as he worked, often when the diner was quiet, a soft, melodic hum would escape his lips. He'd sing the tunes he'd learned on the old piano, his voice clear and pure, filling the small kitchen. Maria, bustling about her own tasks, would often pause, captivated. She'd lean against the doorframe, a small smile playing on her lips, her eyes closed as she listened to the sweet, soaring notes. His voice was a revelation, a hidden gem, full of emotion and a raw beauty that belied his young age and difficult life. She noticed the way he struggled with his stick, the grimace of pain that sometimes crossed his face. His determination, combined with the haunting beauty of his voice, touched her deeply. Without a word, she began to save, setting aside a little money each day, a secret mission forming in her heart. One evening, after the last customer had left and the diner was finally closed, Maria called Jack to the counter. "Are you tired from work, son?" she asked, her voice warm. Jack smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that transformed his face. "No, Maria. I'm not tired at all. Just being here, having a place, I feel so happy." Maria's smile widened. She reached under the counter and pulled out a long, slender package, wrapped in plain brown paper. "This is for you. A reward for your hard work." Jack's eyes widened in surprise. He carefully unwrapped it, his breath catching in his throat. Inside lay a pair of brand-new crutches, gleaming silver, with comfortable padded grips. He stared at them, then at Maria, his eyes brimming with tears. This was a gift, a kindness so profound it shook him to his core. His own father had taken his old crutch, viewing it as a mere object to be sold. Maria saw it as a tool for his freedom, a symbol of his worth. Maria's eyes were soft as she watched his reaction. "Jack," she began, her voice gentle, "I want to adopt you. You don't have to be a lost boy anymore. You'll be my son." The words were a balm to his wounded soul. He looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time not just as a kind stranger, but as a beacon of unconditional love. Without hesitation, he launched himself forward, wrapping his arms around her, burying his face in her shoulder. They stood there embracing, tears streaming down both their faces, tears of pain released, and tears of a new profound love found. Jack had a family again, a real one. In the days that followed, Jack's life transformed. He continued to work diligently at Maria's kitchen, but now with a renewed purpose. Maria, true to her word, found a school for him, ensuring he could pick up his education where it had been so cruelly cut short. He attended classes during the day, then returned to the diner in the afternoons, helping Maria with the evening rush. At school, his quiet demeanor gradually gave way to a blossoming confidence, especially when it came to music. His music teacher, a passionate and observant woman named Ms. Davies, quickly noticed his extraordinary talent. During a school concert, Jack, hesitant at first, had been persuaded to sing. His voice, rich and resonant, filled the auditorium, silencing every whisper, every shuffle. Ms. Davies was deeply impressed. She spoke to Maria, her voice filled with excitement. "Maria, Jack has a truly exceptional gift. He needs to be in a specialized music school. The tuition is high, but if he's good enough, he could earn a full scholarship." Jack overheard their conversation, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. He approached Maria later that evening, his resolve firm. "Maria, I'll try my absolute best. I won't let you spend any more money on me." And he did. He practiced relentlessly, his fingers flying over the piano keys, his voice soaring through scales and melodies. He poured every ounce of his being into his audition, fueled by the love and belief Maria had shown him. The results came a few weeks later. Jack had earned the full scholarship. His journey, once marked by rejection and despair, was now charting a new course, guided by the melody of his own making. 10 years later, the name Jack Thompson echoed through concert halls and blared from radios worldwide. He was no longer the limping, discarded boy. He was a celebrated singer-songwriter, a multimillionaire whose soulful voice and poignant lyrics resonated with millions. His music, often infused with themes of resilience, hope, and the pain of betrayal, captivated audiences, turning him into a global sensation. His life with Maria, his adoptive mother, was a tapestry woven with love, respect, and shared joy. Their small diner had long since been upgraded to a thriving, beloved restaurant, a testament to Maria's hard work and Jack's unwavering support. They lived comfortably, surrounded by the warmth of a true family, a stark contrast to the cold existence Jack had once known. Meanwhile, in a forgotten corner of the city, the lives of Michael, Sarah, and Daniel had spiraled into a grim parody of their former arrogance. Daniel, pampered and unchecked, had plunged headfirst into a crippling addiction to online gaming. He gambled away vast sums, accumulating massive debts that quickly overwhelmed the family. Their once proud house, the symbol of Michael's aspirations and Daniel's privileged upbringing, was sold to cover the mounting bills. They were forced to move into a cramped, dilapidated apartment, their lives reduced to a constant struggle for survival, a bitter taste of the very burden they had accused Jack of being. One evening, huddled in their squalid living room, they saw him. On the large flat-screen TV in a shop window across the street, Jack Thompson was performing to a roaring crowd, his face beaming, his crutches now merely an accessory to his powerful stage presence, rather than a mark of shame. Michael, Sarah, and Daniel stared, their faces a mixture of shock, envy, and a dawning desperate realization. He was their Jack, the boy they had cast aside. A desperate plan formed. They tracked him down, appearing unannounced at a charity event where Jack was performing. Michael, his face haggard, pushed through the crowd, Sarah clutching his arm, Daniel lurking behind them. "Jack! Son! It's us!" Michael cried, his voice thick with feigned emotion. Jack, mid-conversation with the fan, turned. His eyes, once filled with a child's longing for their approval, were now cold, unyielding. He looked at them not with anger, but with a profound, chilling indifference. "I don't know you," he stated calmly, turning back to the fan. Enraged by his dismissal, Michael lunged forward, grabbing Jack's arm. "How dare you? We're your family." Sarah began to wail, a theatrical display of maternal grief. Daniel, emboldened, shouted, "You owe us. You left us." Their desperate cries and accusations drew the attention of the media. Cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Jack looked at the swirling chaos, a quiet resolve settling over him. This was it, the moment to finally lay bare the truth. He stepped forward, his voice, though soft, carrying surprising authority. "You want to know my story? You want to know about my family?" He paused, allowing the cameras to zoom in, the silence to build. "This is the family who called me a burden, who took away my education, who threw me out onto the streets, and who even took my crutch." Then, with a dramatic flourish, he produced a faded, yellowed piece of paper. It was the disownment agreement, signed by him, witnessed by his biological parents. "And this," he declared, holding it up for all to see, "is the document they made me sign, severing all ties so I wouldn't implicate them if anything happened to me." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The journalists furiously scribbled notes, their faces a mixture of shock and outrage. The story, raw and devastating, spread like wildfire. The public, who had already adored Jack for his talent, now revered him for his incredible resilience and his quiet dignity in the face of such unspeakable cruelty. Michael, Sarah, and Daniel stood frozen, their faces pale, their carefully constructed facade of victimhood crumbling around them. The cheers for Jack turned into a chorus of condemnation, angry shouts, and disgusted whispers directed at them. Humiliation, hot and searing, washed over them. They were exposed, their callousness laid bare for the entire world to see. With heads bowed in shame, they slunk away, disappearing back into the shadows from which they had emerged, their brief, desperate attempt to reclaim a son they had never truly valued ending in utter disgrace. Jack watched them go, a quiet sense of closure settling over him. His true family was waiting for him, and his future finally was entirely his own. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts or opinions about this story, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel to support us. Your support means the world. Thank you again.